This movie is underrated. Granted, this movie is not perfect. In terms of flaws with the movie, I would say some of the dialogue in certain scenes is a bit corny, and the way John Travolta gets killed off at the end is a little too over the top. But aside from that, I think this movie is pretty good, largely because Thomas Jane is excellent in the lead role of Frank Castle. He carries this movie and he makes you feel for Frank Castle as a character. John Travolta is also a bright spot in the film as the villain Howard Saint. He looked like he was relishing this role and having a good time. The action scenes are very well done. They're very gritty, intense, and realistic. I also love the score by Carlo Siliotto. Doctor Strange, I feel, is one of the better MCU films. Benedict Cumberbatch is fantastic as Stephen Strange, and he is definitive in this role and is absolutely perfect. Chiwetel Ejiofor is great as Mordo. Tilda Swinton does a good job as the Ancient One. Rachel McAdams does a good job as the love interest. Mads Mikkelsen does a good job as Caecilius. Visuals are stunning. The action scenes are a lot of fun. The soundtrack is great. It's a very funny movie. Overall, I love Doctor Strange, and I think this movie is underrated. Ant-Man is a very underrated movie in the MCU. Paul Rudd is fantastic as Scott Lang, and he owns this role. Michael Douglas is excellent as Hank Pym. Michael Pena is hilarious as Louise. Evangeline Lilly is good as Hope. Corey Stoll does a good job as Yellow Jacket. The visual effects are stunning. It's a very funny film. The action is great. The musical score is great. Ant-Man is a very fun movie, and I absolutely love watching it, and out of all three Ant-Man movies, this is easily the best one. Improvement over the theatrical cut, and it's one of my favorite DCEU movies, and very underrated. I know a lot of people tend to complain, oh, Batman kills in this film, and the film is saying it's okay for Batman to kill. No, the film is saying it's not okay for Batman to kill. It's the point of his character development. And it took him almost killing Superman for him to get a clue to realize he's become no better than the man who killed his parents. And while you could say, oh, the film doesn't fully explore why he now kills people and why his moral code is out the window, but if you remember the scene where he's talking with Alfred, and he says, 20 years in Gotham, Alfred, we've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? This scene hints that he's been doing his job a certain way, and after 20 years, it didn't get the job done. He lost his faith in humanity. Ben Affleck was amazing in this film as Batman and Bruce Wayne. All the Batman stuff was amazing, and Ben Affleck gives the best performance in the whole movie. Henry Cavill shows why he's still my favorite Superman, willing to die for a world that hates him. The visuals are stunning. It's a well-shot movie. The musical score is amazing. The action is great, especially the warehouse fight scene, and of course the fight between Batman and Superman. I only have two flaws. Not a fan of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, and the Martha scene, while not cringeworthy, is still a bit silly. But other than that, I thought this film was great. I think the director's cut of Daredevil is a criminally underrated comic book movie. Ben Affleck is fantastic as Daredevil. I think his performance in this film is far better than people give him credit for. I especially love the arc he has in this movie, learning what true justice means. There is a really good scene in this film where he beats up a criminal and he's witnessed by a little boy who's scared of him, and he's telling the kid and himself that he's not the bad guy. And I really love how this scene shows us with the hero struggling with what he does and how he does it. And I like how it comes full circle. He lets Quesada die on a C train track in the beginning, but at the end, he will not kill the Kingpin even when he has the perfect opportunity, because he learned there is a line between justice and vengeance. Jennifer Garner does a good job as Elektra. Colin Farrell is relishing his role as as Bullseye and is clearly having a blast playing this character. Michael Clarke Duncan is fantastic as Kingpin. Jon Favreau does a great job as Foggy Nelson, and he has some really funny lines. Joe Pantoliano is great as Ben Urich. The action scenes are a ton of fun. The score is amazing. Now, I will admit, there is one flaw I have. My flaw is the playground scene. Yes, the playground scene is silly, but aside from that, I love this movie. Thor is an MCU movie I find very underrated. Chris Hemsworth is terrific as Thor. Tom Hiddleston is fantastic as Loki. Natalie Portman does well as Jane Foster. Anthony Hopkins is good as Odin. The action scenes are a ton of fun, and there's really good special effects. Now, I know one thing people complain about is Thor not having his powers for most of the movie, but I actually don't mind because I like how his arc in this movie is him learning to be a true hero. In terms of flaws, I would say Kat Dennings was kind of annoying sometimes. I love this movie, and I think it's the second best Thor movie. Iron Man 3 is a solid MCU movie. Robert Downey Jr., as usual, is fantastic as Tony Stark. Gwyneth Paltrow is good as Pepper Potts. Don Cheadle, in my opinion, does a much better job in this film than he did in Iron Man 2. Guy Pearce does a good job as Aldrich Killian. The movie has fun action scenes, stunning visual effects, and a great score. Iron Man 3 is a movie that I really enjoy, and I honestly think this movie is underrated. The Incredible Hulk is the most underrated MCU movie. Let's start talking about the performances. Edward Norton is fantastic in this movie, and if I'm being honest, he is the best on-screen Hulk. I love how he embraced the character's inner turmoil and gave us a Bruce Banner that was tortured and conflicted with the monster within. As for the Hulk himself, this is the best version of Hulk. Liv Tyler does a good job as Betty Ross. Tim Roth and William Hurt are both terrific. The movie has exciting action scenes and a really good score. The Incredible Hulk is a movie I feel gets hated on too much. It's not the best MCU movie, but it's far from the worst. The Wolverine, in my opinion, is super underrated, and it's one of the better films in the X-Men franchise. TMNT 2007 I honestly think is an underrated film. This film has a lot of good character moments regarding Leo and Raph, and I honestly think this film should get a lot more love. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is an excellent sequel to the first one. Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, and Vin Diesel are all fantastic once again as their characters, and Baby Groot in particular is hilarious. Karen Gillan does a great job as Nebula. Michael Rooker as Yondu is fantastic. In my opinion, he steals the show in this movie. Kurt Russell also does a great job as Ego, and Ego, I think, is one of my favorite MCU villains. The visual effects are stunning, the action scenes are great, the soundtrack is great, it's a very funny movie. I absolutely love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and if I'm being honest, I think this movie gets way too much hate. Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a lot of fun. Troy Baker is excellent as the voice of Batman. Andrew Bauza, Kyle Mooney, Baron Vaughn, and Darren Criss are all terrific as the Turtles, and they have really good chemistry. Andrew Kashino and Cass Anvar are menacing as Shredder and Ra's al Ghul. The action scenes are a lot of fun. There's also a lot of good humor in this movie, and the animation is stunning. Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a huge surprise for me. I had a blast watching this movie, and it's one of the best Ninja Turtle movies. Man of Steel is a very underrated superhero movie. Henry Cavill is fantastic as Superman. He does an excellent job. Amy Adams is good as Lois Lane. Kevin Costner is terrific as Pa Kent. I love Russell Crowe as Jor-El. Michael Shannon is phenomenal as General Zod. General Zod is a great villain. He has understandable motives, he's very menacing, and he is easily the best villain in the DCEU. The movie has stunning visual effects, terrific action scenes, and an amazing score by Hans Zimmer. Now, I know some people do have criticisms about this movie that I personally feel are really dumb. One criticism being, oh, he causes too much destruction. But then again, him and Zod are superpowered beings, so of course there's going to be destruction. And if there's an alien invasion, yeah, there's going to be destruction. And of course, let's get into the biggest complaint about this movie that I constantly hear. Superman wouldn't kill anyone. I can't believe he killed Zod. Let me just say this though. He killed Zod in Superman 2, so why give Superman 2 a pass and Man of Steel a hard time? Sorry, that complaint just annoys me. I absolutely love Man of Steel, and out of all the comic book movies that came out in the year 2013, Man of Steel is hands down the best one. Blade 2 is a very underrated comic book movie. Wesley Snipes, as usual, kills it as Blade, and he is once again fantastic in this movie. Chris Christopherson is entertaining as Whistler. Ron Perlman is very enjoyable in a supporting role. Luke Goss as the villain in this film I think is much better than Deacon Frost. He has more motivation, you understand why he's upset, and he's a great challenger for Blade. I absolutely love the fight scenes in this film. They're some of my favorites among the entire series. The soundtrack is fantastic, especially in a fight scene where Blade is taking on a bunch of guards. I absolutely love Blade 2. This is my favorite of the Blade trilogy, and this film is very overlooked. I absolutely love this film, and this film should not get overlooked. This film should get more recognition for how good it is. Aaron Taylor Johnson does a good job in the lead role. Chloe Grace Moretz steals the show as Hit Girl. She is awesome. Nicolas Cage is super entertaining as Big Daddy, and he relishes this role. Red Mist was also a very entertaining presence. Mark Strong does a good job as the villain. There's a lot of fun action scenes, and the movie is hilarious throughout. The movie is also paced very well. There was never one dull moment. Dredd is a movie that if you have not watched it, I strongly recommend that you check it out because this film is an underrated gem and it's one of my favorite comic book movies. Karl Urban is fantastic in this movie, and I easily think this is his best performance. In terms of superhero casting choices, I would actually say he's very overlooked. Olivia Thirlby does a really good job as Judge Dredd's partner, and she works well with Karl Urban. Lena Headey is terrific as the villain. The movie is incredibly well shot. The action scenes are super well done. They're very intense. There's no stupid shaky cam, and you can tell what's happening. Hellboy is a very fun comic book movie that's very underrated. Ron Perlman owns the role of Hellboy. He is one of the best actors cast as a superhero, and he is definitive in this role. Doug Jones is also good as Abe Sapien. John Hurt was also really good as Hellboy's human father. His relationship with Hellboy was also a strong point. Selma Blair and Rupert Evans also did really well for their roles. The action scenes were very entertaining. The musical score is also really good. Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is one of the best Batman movies of all time. Watchmen is a very underrated comic book movie. Patrick Wilson does a good job as Night Owl. Malin Ackerman is solid as Silk Spectre. Jackie Earle Haley is phenomenal as Rorschach. Rorschach is also the best character in this film, and he's the most interesting and complex. Billy Crudup is amazing as Dr. Manhattan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is not in the movie much as the comedian, but he does a great job for his small screen time. The movie is visually stunning, the soundtrack is great, there's really well done action. I love Watchmen, and this is one of Zack Snyder's best movies. Hellboy 2: The Golden Army for me is better than the first one. Ron Perlman is absolutely amazing in this movie. He does an even better job in this movie than he did in the first one. It was also really cool to see Abe Sapien get a bigger role in this movie. The banter back and forth between Ron Perlman and Doug Jones was definitely one of the best parts of the movie. This movie also has a pretty good villain with very understandable motives. The action scenes in this movie are absolutely incredible. The movie also does a really good job job of further expanding the world. Hellboy 2: The Golden Army is one of my favorite movie sequels. Unbreakable is one of the best films from the year 2000. Bruce Willis is fantastic as David Dunn. Samuel L. Jackson is terrific as Elijah Price. This is definitely a top-tier performance. The movie is very well directed by M. Night Shyamalan. I also love the score by James Newton Howard. Overall, I absolutely adore Unbreakable, and this is one of my all-time favorite movies. The Dark Knight Rises is an excellent conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. Let's start talking about the performances. Christian Bale is fantastic as Batman, and if I'm being honest, this is the best performance he's ever given as this character. Anne Hathaway does a great job as Catwoman. Michael Caine isn't in the movie much, but he does do really good for the screen time he has. Morgan Freeman and Gary Oldman are both terrific. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a really good addition to this movie, and his performance is very good. Tom Hardy is absolutely outstanding as Bane. He gives, in my opinion, the best performance in the whole movie. Bane as a villain has motivations that are understandable. He's a great physical presence. He's scary, and Tom Hardy is able to express a lot of emotions with just his eyes. Bane is the second best villain in the Dark Knight trilogy, right behind Heath Ledger's Joker. The movie is flawlessly shot and flawlessly directed by Christopher Nolan. The score by Hans Zimmer is amazing, and this movie has, in my opinion, the best final battle of the trilogy. I love The Dark Knight Rises. It's not as good as The Dark Knight, but it's still a worthy sequel, and people hate on this movie too much.